Thanks, Gloria. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for that warm welcome. So I'm Jennifer Yao, and I'm an instructional designer here with the Center for Teaching Excellence at Columbia. Started. Okay, so today I'll start with a brief introduction to polysynchronous instruction, and then I'll go and outline 4 principles of engagement and highlight ways you can use each principle to assist with engaging your students. I will conclude by putting all 4 principles together. So let's get started. So when I talk about polysynchronous instruction, what do I mean? Well, traditionally, you have either synchronous courses where students are learning at the same time, such as a face-to-face course, or asynchronous courses when students are learning at different times, such as an online class. There's been a lot of studies on the benefits of both teaching methods separately, but in more recent developments, instructors are finding that they can combine the best of both to engage their students. The combination of synchronous and asynchronous is what is being referred to as polysynchronous instruction. Several examples of this instructional method are found throughout this webinar. One example would be a professor having students in a face-to-face class participate in a debate, and students thinking about a question from that debate and posting their answers to an online discussion board in a learning management system, such as Blackboard. And another example would be when a professor of an online class has all students log into a specific place and time to listen to a guest speaker. So here's a scenario. Let's say you have a student, Nicole, in your introductory physics course. Nicole may have taken physics in high school and really enjoyed the subject, or maybe she had a bad experience with this subject, but she chose to enroll in it because she knew more about it than other science classes, and she needed the credits. Whatever the reason Nicole decided to take your course, she comes into the class already having an idea of what to expect. This doesn't mean that you need to be the greatest live stand-up comedian performer to teach Nicole. You do, however, need to engage her. What is one way you currently engage your students? So in the chat box, type in one way you currently engage your students. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Flipgrid and writing activities and think, pair, share. Excellent ideas. Yeah, absolutely. Kahoot is an excellent one too. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Hands-on activities. Yeah, those are all wonderful examples of how to engage your students. So, psychologist Todd Kardashian writes, if you want people to be interested, committed, and willing to devote effort to learning, mastering, and using these skills for the long haul, then you can't avoid the initial step of stimulating excitement. To accomplish this, it's important to understand some key principles of engagement. So, here are 4 principles gathered from the Chronicle of Higher Education, and we'll go through them right now. So, principle 1, cognitive resources are limited. This brings us to cognitive load theory, attention span, and emotions. In cognitive load theory, information must be stored in a student's working memory until it has been processed sufficiently to pass into long-term memory. That working memory can only handle about 7 chunks of information at a time. So since that working memory has a limited capacity, you should try not you should try to avoid overloading it. Attention span. Students' ability to maintain focus, concentration has its own limits. A recent study by Microsoft concluded that the human attention span has dropped to 8 seconds, nearly 25% drop in just a few years. In addition to the many cell phone notifications, social media posts, and in-class conversations going on, students like the one on this slide may be thinking about how nice the weather is outside, how many books they need to read, a music concert they want to see, maybe what they want for lunch, or their date with a loved one this weekend, or their family and friends. You get the picture. You're competing with a lot of distractions. Knowing this, What can you do? So here are several ways you can engage your students and avoid that cognitive overload. Reduce working memory space. The mind processes visual and auditory information separately. This means that auditory items in students' working memory do not compete with visual items in the same way that two visual items compete with each other, like picture and text. For example, let's say you have a really complex slide diagram you're showing your students, and then you show them another slide with lots of explanations on it, with lots of information and text. You might want to change this to include more narrative voice explanation to reduce students' working memory space. Liven course content by connecting it to the emotional lives of your students. That emotional stimuli draws students' attention. Choose content, that activities and assignments, that is relevant to your students. Relevance attracts attention and motivates engagement. Chunk your classes up into smaller time periods. Depending upon your time limits in your class, maybe assign each chunk of time a specific topic, and introduce it with an emotional hook. What do I mean by emotional hook? Think of it like a movie trailer or preview. An educational psychologist, Katina Smith's description of emotional hook is a brief lesson, maybe a content teaser, a relevant activity, maybe a story or song, a provocative question or headline, maybe a demonstration video or case study designed to stimulate interest, curiosity, and be active within that. Your information can be connected to those course concepts. These hooks should not replace the day's lesson, but rather serve as a trailer of sorts to spark that interest and curiosity in your students. Combine activities through polysynchronous instruction. Combine those face-to-face discussions and group activities with an online exam. Maybe reduce time spent in class with activities that they could take on their own time. Your persona and performance matters as principle two. Some of you may cringe when I say college teaching can be a performance art, as you, the instructors, are the performer. However, this is an incredible opportunity to help your students fall in love with the subject matter. Research has shown that the degree of effort and enthusiasm you invest in your class presentations will be evident to your students and may, in part, determine how much effort and enthusiasm they will invest in your class. Here are some examples of how to do that in your course. Get someone to film you teaching your course and review the material. Look for how you move around the room. How does your voice sound? Do you stand in one location? Are you talking with your back to your students a lot, or only focusing on the first two rows? Focus on your behavioral cues. Are you making eye contact with your students in a face-to-face course? Are you participating in online discussions and answering questions in a timely manner? Follow up with students online. Send out weekly announcements to your students and follow up on how they're doing in the class. This is especially beneficial to asynchronous classes where you don't see your students every week. Freshen up your material. If you can't change your material, maybe you can focus on changing your teaching methods with different activities or adding instructional videos. Use humor when appropriate. Maybe begin each class by finding and playing a known song that could segue into today's topic, and then invite students to guess its relevance. And then for an assignment, you could have students submit something online related to the topic. Principle number three, students are intensely social creatures, motivated by community. If you're like most people, they envision students sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, or completing a test, activities that are usually designed for individual students. There's nothing wrong with this way of teaching and learning. It's been around for many years and will continue. However, students are no longer empty vessels that need to be filled up with massive amounts of educational information very quickly. Many have the internet with information at their fingertips 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They often come to class with lots of prior knowledge. They are social by nature and want to discuss their experiences with fellow classmates. So whether your class is online, face-to-face, or a hybrid format, students want to connect. Here are some ways that you can help. Build community in different ways. Create a welcome to the course online letter. Use a welcoming tone in a face to face course. Provide feedback regularly. Maybe use some icebreaker activities. Arrange the desks in a different pattern. Have a two-stage exam, maybe where students complete the test on their own at home and then have an opportunity to work together in groups to earn more points. Remember the three types of interactions students will encounter. That's student to instructor, student to student, and student to content. And help build community for those three. Further your discussions from in class to online. Create lively discussions in class and then continue them with an online format, maybe furthering the discussions in Blackboard or Slack or Discord or Yellow Dig. Diversify your curriculum and teaching strategies. Include a variety of voices that students could listen to, people from a variety of backgrounds, life histories that have relevance to your course topics, like alumni, or maybe people currently working in the field, like a guest lecturer in a class, and then maybe a group project online. Principle number 4, stories are our most natural form of thought. David Goublar, a lecturer at the University of Iowa, wrote, "When you talk about yourself to your students, you signal to them you trust them and see them as worthy confidence. That in turn encourages students to feel more at ease, to open up themselves and commit more fully to the class. Obviously, sharing too much and too often is inappropriate and likely to distract from your credibility. But research shows students appreciate, in particular, hearing stories of their instructors dealing with academic obstacles and overcoming them. Here are some ways that you can do that. Share stories of a traveled path to discovery, including eliciting the help of alumni to come back and tell how an internship or working in the field led them to an important discovery about their career path. Give students an opportunity to share their diverse experiences, maybe with a project, a podcast, maybe with a short video or other multimedia. Give students a reason to be invested in the story's outcome. For example, a professor asked his students to bring to class a series of selfies they had taken on their phones to examine the story being told by those images for a psychology class. They were discussing a sense of self. Then he asked students to post them online where students can comment on what the activities tell about the person in the photos. What story is the person in the photo trying to say about themselves? Now that we have all four principles, here are examples of how all four of them can come together to engage students. Emotions. The professor really engaged our emotions when we watched a short video and participated in an in-class virtual reality activity about what it's like to be homeless. And I even felt those emotions as I continued with this discussion online. Performance. The professor used humor and put a lot of thought into the lecture with real world examples. She made eye contact with us and followed up with us online to make sure that we had all the information we needed for our online assignment. Community. Instead of a traditional roll call, the professor took attendance by having everyone answer a fun question about their favorite movie or food. It was a lot of fun. I found that I had a lot in common with several classmates, and this helped break the ice when we had to pair up for our group assignment. Stories. The professor invited several alumni to come into class and talk about their internships and projects. I felt more confident as I was able to ask questions and talk about my own experiences with the subject matter. So you see how all four come together to create engagement. Well, if nobody has any further questions or any comments or anything, I will let you go a little early. And I appreciate you all taking the time this afternoon to listen to my webinar, and hope you all have a really wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much.